So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I am always John.
And this is Jeremy.
All right, folks, welcome. Real quick up top, please donate to the Shuri Joe Fund. Last week I forgot to do that at the top, and well, it got pushed to the back. So I would rather everyone listen to this part and then completely turn off the video and go donate to the Shuri Joe Fund. The fund is in the little description down below, as you can hopefully clearly see. So please donate and give your dollars. When a paycheck comes in, I will be giving my dollars very shortly. But sending that via international stuff is a little difficult. So, anything else you want to kind of add in that, Jeremy?
No, not this time. No, that's good.
Cool. So real quick, so some people have been asking about this. I guess it's kind of behind the scenes type deal. At this time, we will not be posting Karate Without Belts on any sort of podcast forum, with the exception of YouTube. So, do you know why that is, Jeremy?
Probably mixed results. So
Mixed results. I like that one. It's actually the Joe Rogan reason. So essentially, it looks like, and if somebody knows, they can please point this out to me. But it looks like any place we would put this in, like an RSS feed, above a certain amount of data will cost us money. YouTube does not cost us money. So we're staying on this platform. The current CHOPA stuff, where right now apparently the FCC is now got into a legal battle with YouTube over child content and advertising, doesn't really affect us because we don't make content for kids. So I would say our content is family friendly.
Yeah.
Maybe.
For the most part. At least I try to keep it clean, so it's kind of, I don't know.
Would you play this around your kids, Jeremy?
Most of the time I would. So.
All right. So kind of that's that for that topic. So, so Jeremy, you were doing some full contact what yesterday?
No, I try to avoid, as a lot of people call it, Black Friday around here, or as I like to call it, full contact shopping. So especially at the Walmarts and other crazy places that have got insane deals and stuff. And like, I don't need anything that bad to. I mean, I can watch YouTube later and watch the craziness, so that's fine. But yeah, no. That's the only thing I did was go out and get my daughter some ballet shoes, and that was about it. So
that was pretty. You just told me that was kind of a violent event in itself.
Well, yeah, I about got ran over by a car, and I'm like, come on, I'm just picking up some shoes, doggone it. I'm not getting a 65-inch TV. I mean, come on, something worthwhile. I mean, I got a whole $15 pair of ballet shoes. Come on, man. So anyway, that was my excitement for Full Contact Friday. So anyway.
Yeah, and I that got me thinking about, well, what is a lot of that about? It's about buying things, and especially when it comes to what we do, and kind of when we talk about karate, we're always kind of almost anti that to a degree. Maybe not. And I guess today we can talk a little bit about, because you and I have been and are teachers, and I feel this is becoming a lot more the case, is that we're having trouble distinguishing between student and customer, on both ends, both from a teacher's perspective and a student's perspective. And so this is pretty broad, but this goes a lot into what happens with karate too. So today we're going to talk about that. Jeremy, I think you had something to talk about that up top.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll get it started. I mean, it's to me, I see it as a difference in mindset. And I mean, you can have a student, but how that customer relationship is with that student depends. Um, that's just kind of how I've always seen it because I've seen it be a strict customer relationship. I've seen it be a strict student relationship
Right.
where, and I mean, I also teach a course at one of the local universities, and it's interesting. I've had a guy who's in my class this semester. He delayed his graduation date to take this class because it's like one of the capstone courses for the program. He
Right.
delayed his he delayed his graduation to take it with me because it's basically what I've done for 20 plus years. So he wanted to actually know it instead of hey, here's the book and da 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 da. And so in that aspect, that's kind of the difference between, to me, how I see it, somebody who's wanting to learn and is an actual student, as opposed to somebody's like, I want an A. Well, you got to learn. No, I just want an A. I'm like, okay, I mean, why are you bothering with me? Go take an online class, and guess what? You can get your A. You can cheat all you want or whatever, going that route. I mean, there's ways. That's why I really do not like online university courses because I mean, there's so many ways around the security and stuff.
Right.
It's ridiculous, but anyway.
Well, and
So
there's and there, this is stretching back a bit because we're talking about this is now happening in the modern day, as has always been the case. A lot of the image that karate puts out is that student teacher is very sacred. Hard work is always expected. The people work to the bone to actually get the skills that they have. I feel in reality, um, as opposed to that image, is that a lot of Americans, we can probably say, when they first started karate, and everyone's got there's various experiences with this, and there's kind of it depends on who they trained with. But a lot of the early guys who were training in karate were doing so under circumstances where the people who were teaching them were specifically doing it for money to a degree.
yeah, I but I agree with that, but then I also see some of the ways that some of the very first people that started training in karate were trained, and you can't do that today. You cannot do some of the things that were done back then today. You just can't. Especially here, you cannot do stuff like that.
Well, I don't
It,
think there's much difference between America and a lot of other places to this day. Even in Japan, how they've non-contact karate,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
like no contact karate is fairly big. It's fairly popular. It because it's easier than full contact karate, which is harder on a lot of other people.
right.
Uh, but what do you mean in terms of stuff that can't be done today?
Well, I mean,
Like you can't make a Mel Brooks movie today?
yeah, you can't make a Mel Brooks movie. No, I mean, you can't. It's like certain things you used to be able to get away with. Like, for instance, like let's say your instructor was requiring you to wear a cup. Okay, simple safety equipment. Period. You know, um, yeah, I will not acknowledge or deny that I've ever seen this, but where an instructor would go up and kick someone straight in the cup, And, if you had it on, not too much of a problem. If you didn't have it on, well, you pretty much lost a student. I mean, it's just,
Well, or the student learned, or and
well,
this is, that isn't.
yeah,
That's also we have to think about the gender variation there, which would probably speak to then and now in terms of how we view people in martial arts. Um,
right,
but not getting into all that. But the cup check is definitely one thing where people we're using this as martial arts, so they had no problem, you know, pushing people a little more, even though they were getting paid. They were still getting pushed by the people they paid.
right. I mean, and that's cool. I mean, but I mean that, and then you know, you take a or taking a kendo stick, and if your feet weren't straight, you just basically just pop the top of your foot, and basically, it didn't hurt terribly. I mean, it hurt bad enough, but it didn't hurt. It wasn't something that was, might have been mentally altering for life, but not not injury wise. But I mean, it was something you definitely wouldn't forget. So,
Right. And I think that there's, could if you think of it this way, right? And we talk people today, people in this age with applications and phones and the ability to see a lot of stuff.
right,
Would it be reasonable to say and to expect your teacher to be as hard as that, with the expectation that they are training you in a martial art, or as you as user of application, user or person who pays that person to be their teacher or to be their client, or however they would see that as in fact harmful? So
and I think the key to that statement and question would be, what's the relationship
right,
between teacher and said student or said customer? I mean, is it something where I'm paying this, I expect this? Or it's like, look, I'm paying to be a part of this, I'm wanting to learn as much as I can. Uh, it, it, I, I think each person's a little different, and I think it goes into a lot of different facets. I think it goes into different cultures. I think it goes into um, different different ideas, because it was interesting. Um, Parent and I, we were talking about my daughter's ballet class.
right,
Okay. One of the things was some of her friends jumped up, skipped a couple classes and moved up, to level, there were 4 or 5, whatever it was. I don't know what the level was. And I took the approach more as like, no, this is kind of the natural progression. Let's keep her going this way. And when we were talking about it, he was like, yeah, I kept my daughter in that as well too. He goes, I didn't know if she was really ready to jump up that far. And I was just kind of went back, and I'm like, well, I'd rather have a good, solid foundational base and not worry about an accomplishment, worry about the foundation. The accomplishments will come later,
right.
whatever that is. And, okay, yeah, I'm talking about dance, but I also look at that as, from a martial arts perspective. Um,
I
one of the
paid to
things,
be here. I deserve this. X,
yeah,
Y, Z.
yeah,
That
I'm
that
I'm paying $400 a month. I should get at least the next belt every week. I was
or
like,
something to that regard. Right.
yeah, and I mean it's an expectation as opposed to earning. But like, one of the things, I mean, obviously I want my kids to experience martial arts and karate as well. But I also know being a parent may not be the right person to bring down the discipline part of the martial arts onto them. And so I don't want to have that conflict. I'd like to teach them, but yet I don't want to have that. I don't want to have that family conflict, if that makes sense.
Right, and it goes into whether or not you want your kid to have a different experience than what you had an experience with, because if your dad wasn't your martial arts teacher, then you don't really understand how that relationship would function, because that
Yeah,
certainly isn't going to be this. It's not going to be the student or customer relation. It's going to be student who is also little version of me.
yeah, and I mean my kids do not have the same mentality as I do. So if I trained them the way I learned, holy cow! I mean, I'd have to literally sign them up for therapy right afterwards. But I mean, that's just the way things are. So I mean, I've just kind of been scouting, kind of looking to see, okay, who would I like to have possibly teach them just some very simple basics, the discipline of it, just to get that piece out of the way, and then have them start learning from that aspect. And so it's interesting. Whenever I start asking questions, I'll start asking questions and stuff. Okay, how does this work and stuff. And the first thing they start talking about is belts. I'm like, well, stop. I don't.
Did you know the karate podcast that I'm on's name?
Yeah, I'm like, I really don't care about belts, and trust me, if I want to belt them, I can belt them. It's not that big of a deal, but it's like I could care less.
At the same time, you got to realize those people who you're talking to probably have to probably they're already programmed to explain what their system of doing it is, because to 99% of the people who are walking in the door who have no experience with this,
Right.
Be like, my kid wants the next belt, or I want the next belt, coming from the people who are coming from that perspective, which makes our belts bought or our belts earned. That will be a topic for another day. But
yeah, I mean, it gets back into, I mean, it all revolves around the student versus customer relationship.
right.
Are they actually learning, or are they just coming here to? I mean, I know you've had said students that are basically customers. They come in, and by the time they come in again, they've forgotten everything you just taught them.
Right. And then, so I've had some interesting experiences with students who didn't really want to, who approach, and let me put it this way. I've had some great experiences with people who, for whatever reason, karate never stuck unless I was there.
Yeah.
Right. Did they pay me? Yes. Would I still go that route? Because I have always had a conflict personally with money and karate. I've always had some conflict personally. Now, am I saying karate and money don't mix? But that's kind of my answer. It's a little hard to give a real answer for that. But I'm not here to judge anyone. But from my own perspective, it is hard to get them to mix and match. But when I would never slap down a hard and fast payment structure. I just kind of say whenever you can, and some of those people will get annoyed, be like, hey, we'll pay you now, blah 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 blah. Some people were doing it as more as physical, almost as physical therapy.
Mhm.
And to a degree, it was okay that they didn't remember anything because we could just, keep doing it. And because they couldn't do it to repetition, they couldn't make it muscle memory. Um, and that was fine. That was okay. Some people, on the other hand, though, who did not were not doing it for that reason, were simply coming in and going through the motions. I think maybe there's more of a mentality of customer and that person from that perspective, but still, you want that person to, I think, eventually catch on to, no, 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 I'm a student in this. They might start as customers. They might start as
Right.
people who are just paying money to go to a thing, but eventually you want them to get to that point. I think that's the most frustrating part.
Well, I think the other thing, I think one of the keys that I think is essential is I think people have to see what the use of it is for, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, and
I mean, because, I go back to different memories and stuff. It's like, well, I'm just doing this to do it. And, it's like, you ask somebody who does not understand kata even in the least bit. And it's like, well, my instructor said that I have to do this, and this is an exercise only. It's like, really? Is this really an exercise only? There's a little more depth to it than that, buddy, but that's okay. That's where you're at. It's like keep growing. But
right.
it, because I think that's when the light switch turned on with me was whenever I started putting together the analysis of how to look at all this stuff, and it's like, okay, this is how it all gels together. Okay, cool. So, and I start, okay, feed me more, kind of keep going. So,
And I think that's going to depend on the student. It also depends on the program they're in. If you're running it very commercially with no end in sight, especially this goes into when you get to people who get to black belt, like
mhm,
a lot of people will, because of this structure, people fall out after black belt. Why do these people fall out after black belt? Well, because they have nothing. They feel they've accomplished everything they've come to accomplish.
right.
Um, which I don't blame people for necessarily, but that's when you really see who is a student and who is a customer.
Well, and I think also you see somebody who looks at it as, okay, this is my goal in mind, as opposed to this is a lifetime journey. It's two different approaches. Are you looking at it as a project manager? Or are you looking at it as somebody who's actually learning throughout the whole entire time? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and
Uh, and
um,
and I think where people get in trouble with that, I think it's good to have goals like, hey, I want to learn this year. I want to learn that this year. Whatever. I think that's a good thing.
next year I want to
But
learn how to be a pirate.
yeah, exactly. Well, I know where there's a pirate ship. It goes out on the Lake of the Ozarks. But anyway, um, but no, only $10 a cruise. But anyway, that's beside the point. But
Hey, my dad had
so,
fight pirates,
so,
so
sorry, kind of squirrel moment. But if you look at it, I mean, if somebody's, well, my goal is to become black belt. Awesome. What 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 are you going to do after that? Well, I don't know. If that's if that's what their answer is, it's kind of like, J.C. Penney's selling black belts. I mean, they might be leather. They're not going to be. I mean, it's about $20 now. It's no more than $3.98 from like Karate Kid. I mean, inflation's gone up quite a bit, but it's like,
yet wages haven't. It's the 1% who are taking the black belts, Jeremy.
Yeah, whatever.
All right.
Yeah.
That's as far as we're going to go on that joke.
But
these people, these 1% of 1% of people who are running these McDojos need to socialize the Udansha.
But
okay, that's
it. But I think to further on that concept, I think it's also an instructor who should be setting those expectations for further growth after that point.
I think that's a big problem most places have, is that they can't really do that. Or it's not they can't really do that, it's they don't know how to do that. And I think just because of how things are how that system tends to be structured, is that people who end up coming in after that, the assumption is black belt will equal teacher.
Yeah.
And then that person will just kind of fill in as like, oh, now you're in your entry level teaching position. Like it doesn't necessarily work like that, because that person still has their own training.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of winning the game and then having to go back over or start back over as the scorekeeper.
Yeah. And that's one thing I will say that when I was training with Mike Miner, he did a fantastic. I mean, he was probably one of the best people around to really get people to understand. Hey, look, just because you get a black belt, no, we're gonna. This is when the real stuff comes. I mean, this is when we're really gonna get into it and stuff. And so I think, I mean, I'd say definite kudos to him and the school around him. And I mean, they really encompass that. It's kind of like, and everybody was really kind of working together to try to make everybody else better. And so in that aspect, that's one thing I do miss training with Mike's group. Definitely. I mean, I always felt like, when you walked in there, everybody got better when they walked out, not just you. So,
is that because of the group that they happen to be with, or because of the structure that he created?
I think a little bit of both. I think the group that's there was created from the structure he had. So I think the two go hand in hand.
Well, right. And so, I mean, I think that ultimately goes into the kind of school you want to have will be whatever. And because I kind of draw back to the customer-student relation, but also like,
right.
So like karate itself lends itself to, teaching itself lends itself to this, but it does it in a way where you generally don't have this in any other sort of customer transaction, right? You go to the store, you buy a piece of bread, you give it to the cashier takes your money, you take the piece of bread home. End of transaction, right? Right. You beat somebody in the face on Black Friday, you not only have the glory of beating somebody up, but also buying that big screen TV for $5.99, right? Yeah. Boom, transaction. Learning is not such the case,
right?
And when people kind of sit there and expect the knowledge to just simply be passed on to them, it doesn't work that way. But when you have a teacher who can foster a community where people are always feeling like they're learning and pushing themselves and growing, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go into the financial aspect of that, however, how far should one go?
Right. Well, I mean, you look at it a couple different ways. I mean, one way definitely is like, I've paid for this slot of time, I have to be here, da 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 da. But then, I also look at, going back to one of the best lessons I got from Mr. Yada. in which basically, like I said, I'm standing there and he gets into it and he starts going, he goes, you can't do my technique and I can't do yours. And it's like, it's what you put into it. If you put into it just as a business transaction, that's all it's going to be. If you put into it, hey, I'm going to totally get into it. I'm going to totally, learn just for learning's sake, then that's what you're going to get.
And that ebbs and flows with people, and that's to be expected.
Yeah.
So if we could kind of maybe flip this over to somebody who's maybe a school owner or a teacher, those things are not always what's the opposite of mutually exclusive? Mutually together. No, not those the things that are not always together. Because I've met people who can run a school really well, but can't teach worth anything, and the other way around.
Right.
At what point is it okay to say, I can charge this person X amount of money because I don't know if this person is going to stick around? As opposed to, this person's been with me for X number of years. This person's already paid their dues and XYZ, so they're teaching for me and all this other stuff. So I will alleviate any sort of financial burden this may incur. Which I hate to talk about money in this regard, but I mean, it always comes up when we talk about these things because customer, right? Person's paying. Students always tend to pay something. So
Yeah.
at what point is it ethical to charge them at X amount of money? Is it not?
Well, you get into you get into the instructor, you get into the whoever's the head of the organization, whatever organization you're running, whether it's a club, whether it's a complete organization. First off, are you wanting to just cover costs? Are you wanting to actually make a living doing it? I mean, those two things definitely come into play from an instructor point of view, or at least as I see it, it does.
Right. I do remember teaching a class, um, and then we're helping instruct a kind of open beginner class with somebody we both know. And then at the end, this person having to field questions about cost and him just not knowing what the answers were. And I'm like, buddy, you're on your own. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No. I vaguely remember that. Yes. So.
Yeah. And so I think I'm always, as in from a teacher's perspective, should we view people who just begin as customers and then eventually see where they come to be students? Is that prudent? Because I feel that's like what a lot of people do, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think almost you have. In some ways, you have to because at first you're almost building that student teacher relationship,
Right.
or you're building a businessman customer relationship. Now, can those two come together? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think everybody starts out with businessman customer relationship. I think that's how it starts. It started that way with me too. You know,
Walk in for a free lesson.
yeah, and then after a while, it's like, okay, great. Now I've got my interest up. Now I want to start just learning, and it's like, let's go. So, but how much of that is the culture of customer said student or businessman instructor?
Right.
I mean, it just becomes that relationship and that tie of that bond between the two. Um, I've been in situations where, yeah, it has it has been somewhat of a customer relationship, and I've been in a lot of situations where it was instructor student. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, definitely each one's different, and definitely the instructor student one, I definitely got a lot more out of that, obviously.
I think we all prefer that because there's generally some meaning and respect behind that as opposed to just, here's the thing I did for you because you paid me money. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Like it can be as rude or as polite as you want it to be. But
Right.
especially when it comes to being an instructor, from a student perspective, you need to become teachable. You need to become, ready to kind of bow to what that person says. Um,
Yeah,
from
I
a
mean,
custom from a customer perspective, not so much.
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things. I think that's one of the things that was really ingrained in me early on was, you know, here are the Dojo Kunin guiding principles. The first guiding principle with us is when asked to be taught, be submissive and free from prejudice, except the teacher has shown. In this way, you not establish your own peculiarities or bad habits. In other words, get your head out and follow what's being taught as opposed to thinking you know something. That way you don't get killed. So I'm not talking outside the dojo, I'm talking inside the dojo. So no,
Especially in those days.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah, that was the wrong thing to do, to go into school and think you knew something and get your butt handed to you. So
Well, and I think that, and to a degree, that still happens today. I think that's just happening in a different way because
yeah,
there's in one regard there is with karate there is less and less willingness to do that, but in other martial arts there's plenty of more willingness to do that.
right,
Just because of how things have come to pass, let's say.
yeah,
Um,
I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, yeah, and when there's a challenge that comes up, yeah, you got to step up to the challenge. You better be ready. But
and I think that to a degree is something we're probably lacking in karate these days is that we do not challenge our students. Is that we are seeing them more as customers and we do not want to challenge the customers lest we lose them.
right,
But what attracted people to karate in the first place, right? What attracted us to karate? And it was not paying money to get something. And the people, you don't want the people who are going to just pay money to get something. You want them to kind of embrace those challenges. And it won't necessarily be the challenges you had, but it's that creativeness that teachers need to have with students to create the challenges for them
yeah,
that clearly structure sometimes negates or avoids completely, but maybe I'm wrong in that aspect.
well, I think you're right on the money, because it's like, I mean, if the instructor doesn't take responsibility to create those openings for that student to come in and actually really want to learn, then it's always going to be some type of awkward relationship as opposed to student teacher relationship. So,
Well, and it's also creating opportunities, right?
right,
They're opportunity, like you want to, if you're only approaching students, like if you're, especially when we talk about kids, if you're only approaching kids with the same thing every time, that kid is going to get bored.
yeah,
But so you have to engage with them, and I feel there's more and more there. If people aren't engaging with them in different ways, especially today,
uh,
um,
well, and the other thing is, I don't think you're thinking just of kids either. I think it's also adults. But I mean,
oh, it's the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I see. I I've told you about stories in previous podcasts of, hey, I want to do this, but I don't want to go through this. I want to go do my own little thing, but yet I don't want to train real hard doing something other than what I don't want to do. And it's like,
You gotta learn how to do it.
Well, I mean, it goes back to, it does go back to that student, teacher, and customer businessman relationship. Because I think the customer businessman relationship, you have some type of standoffishness. Like, I'm paying money, and so therefore I can do whatever I want. As opposed to the student actually saying, hey, look, you're the teacher, you tell me what I'm going to do, therefore I'm going to do it.
It's the inverse. It's the inverse of what we normally hear, is that the customer is always right. Right. And then ultimately that cannot be the case when it comes to education. At least most of the time it cannot be the case. Sometimes it is the case where the student is right and the teacher is wrong, but
let's clarify education from learning.
Right.
Because it's two different things. As I'm learning right now, it's two different things.
So. Right. And obviously we want to, because kind of how we've construed things on this podcast, we're more or less chucking the ideas of, at least more traditional ideas of, education out the door, and more going towards the point of learning.
Right.
But we don't. Well, that's something for another day. But we want people to at least come into our schools and come into our lessons with the trust in what's going on, right? And then you can talk about trust of a brand, right? So why do people go to Shotokan, and why do people go to Taekwondo? Right. Or these karate schools, or even nowadays like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai.
Or even, down the road, you go to Jim Bob's school, whoop ass, it just doesn't matter. It's like, what's your preference?
Yeah. People don't know half the time, but it's, they like gonna go down the street and be like, come to our Dai Ryu Tote Jitsu Do school for karate, like they're even, and here's the thing, even in Japanese that would look ridiculous. Even in Japanese that would look ridiculous.
And I mean it was interesting, because I remember getting into a debate with somebody, and they were talking about the name of the school, and it was like just way out there. And I don't even remember what it was, but it was just like, look, I've been doing this at the time 20 years plus, and I'm like, if I came in off the street, I wouldn't give a poop what that was. I'm trying to clean it up.
No poops given on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I almost said something else. I'm like, no, let's keep it family friendly.
Let's not go towards the early episodes where Marty was using his New Zealand colloquialisms a bit too.
I love you, Marty. I'll tell you what. Anyway, but I mean, it's like, trying to get, and I get it. Everybody gets excited about their brand and their art and stuff like that. But my favorite thing is, you see a sign that says karate up on a strip mall. You go in, oh no, we're actually practicing Tai Chi. You're like, what? I mean, part of you just wants to just like, what the heck are you doing? But the other part of me is like, okay, people understand that simplicity done.
Right. And that's just smart branding. That's just being able to, and this comes to the teacher perspective of this, where it's just, if you keep things simple,
Hmm.
then people will understand what's going on. But if you try, and we've seen this in the art we practice because of the name changes constantly that they try to make. If you try to make it far too complicated, then it's, if you got to take 10 minutes, 20 minutes to explain something, you're going to maybe lose 95% of people.
Yeah,
Um, but if you can kind of simplify everything into one sentence, most of the time people kind of will be on board, I feel.
yeah, yeah, and that gets back to kind of a funny story. I I was I was working with somebody and they were throwing out all sorts of Japanese terms, and other students in the class, they were just kind of like, what are we talking about? And after class, the gal comes up to me and she goes, why don't you use the Japanese terminology? And I'm like, because my students are American. They don't speak Japanese. I've got to get what I'm teaching related over to them. Does that mean that I don't like or want to learn Japanese? No. But right now, as they're learning, I better speak American or English
I
or
better, I better speak American.
or here in Missouri, maybe it's hillbilly. I don't know. It's just I better get through to them the way I can get through to them. I don't need to throw out a bunch of fancy stuff while they're trying to figure all this stuff out.
I mean,
And
in
that,
reality, like that. It kind of gets off topic, but like I agree with that 100%. As someone who is a educator, like of English, and who is at least some proficiency in Japanese, I've had so many people like ask me like, "What's this in Japanese?" or "What's that in Japanese?" And at the end of the day, I'm just like, "I don't know. Don't worry about it. Just use English, like, or just use like the language people understand." And that's not to say you shouldn't or shouldn't at least know that, but at
right.
the end of the day, like, unless you're gonna start interacting with people who are going to use that term,
Yeah.
and so you and other people you are teaching will understand it when they use it, you don't need to worry about it. And this is coming from the guy who wrote the article about how we need to not use Japanese and use Uchinaguchi in our karate. So,
But
so even lesser known version, probably more closer to hillbilly than no, it's not close to
but
that, but
but I mean, taking that example,
right,
that that right there, understanding who the people you're teaching are is a lot more important than throwing out some terms that are going to confuse them. And therefore, that's still going to cause some type of animosity, conflict. Somehow, it's not going, that relationship between student and teacher is not going to be there, and you're not going to get the full effects of having a student teacher relationship.
right. Unless you're going to use those terms fluently in terms of like this is what we're going to call it in class,
Yeah.
right? And you know how to build that into the class, so it just comes natural in the class and people can use it.
or
But if it
progress to that later on.
right, exactly.
Start off with something they can relate to, and then progress to it. And then I think that builds their trust as opposed to, well, I'm an instructor and
builds
you're,
their builds their
you know,
interest too, which is what you want.
yeah,
It's always what you want is you want people to be very enticed to kind of go further and learn more.
yeah,
That's when you know you're doing it right. But I'm not going to completely call it out, but I had speaking of trying to sell things, the customer relationship. We were making a T-shirt, and I put someone in charge of the T-shirt, and someone made the T-shirt, and they didn't actually put the name of the school on there. They just put the initials on the back of the T-shirt, and I was like, Why isn't the name of the school on here for anyone else to see? Oh, well, it'll keep people guessing and people will ask and they see it. And I said, no, they won't. So,
Yeah, I mean,
again, smart branding.
yeah, yeah. There's a level of curiosity building, but there's also a level of trust you want to build with with people you're teaching too. So I'm just, that's
Yeah, kind of an odd one out there. Anything else we want to kind of say about this topic?
no, I think that hits it on the head, and I think that's a good close personally. So
Yeah, cool, cool, cool. Jeremy, what are you working on this week? Anything particular?
um, well, I'm my legs have started getting to the point where I can start doing footwork drills and things like that. So
Awesome.
I'm going slow, but that's kind of what I've been working on the last 2 3 days is just some basic footwork drills and stuff. So I'm just going to keep doing that and work on getting my knees stabilized and stuff. So
Good, good, good. That's that's great to hear. I've been experimenting a little more with Joe boxing
oh,
or Joe Shadow. I could just call it Joe boxing. So
yeah,
sounds like a guy's name. Joe boxing. What does he do? He boxes all day and night.
yeah,
He's Amazon's best underpaid employee.
yes,
So just going on that not the footwork of that, but just on that box and just doing stuff at random, but also just trying to follow patterns and trying to kind of let a pattern develop out of what I will kind of naturally do,
hmm
and then trying to run my legs off. But
yeah. No, I got you. Very cool.
cool, 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 cool. Well, all right, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Jeremy, anything you want to kind of say in closing?
Um, I guess in closing, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday this last week. And
Except the Canadians, people who had Thanksgiving in October.
hey, all I know is Thursday I was doing some major cooking. That was the main thing I know. So that was good. So go food, but
Go food indeed.
go food. So all right. So
Team food as opposed to team drinks.
so I've got enough turkey to last me at least another 3 4 5 days. So
Can you put it in an ice box? Can you send it here?
I wish I could. I wish I could. Next, I tell you what. Next time you come to the States, drop by and I'll have something for you. How's that? So
If I'm stopping by KC, we're doing barbecue.
hey, I'll do that too. Doesn't bother me. So
Do you guys do barbecue turkey?
uh, I I have a huge smoker, so I smoke like 2 turkeys, and so I based it in like apple cider and apple ale and things like that. So it's it it was it, and I inject that thing so full of butter. I mean, it goes up almost 3 or 4 more pounds. But I stuck the thermometer in there to check the temp, and I mean, literally, butter starts shooting down.
I was trying to explain to the kids what Thanksgiving was, and I was trying to explain because in Japan they don't have turkeys, so I was trying to explain what turkey was and how it wasn't a chicken. And
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, we put stuff in it too. Sometimes we put stuffing, and they're like, what's stuffing? I'm like, mixed up bread. And so trying to
yeah,
explain that. And now you're telling me you're putting butter in a turkey? Ah,
yeah. So absolutely, the only way to cook it. So it's
as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, for every calorie you take in, it's a calorie you need to burn. So,
I need to burn about 10,000 calories after Thursday. So all right. Anyway,
well, folks, remember please to donate to the Shuri Joe Castle Fund. Um, thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to keep training.